Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Jane McKay. I'm a senior software engineering manager at Dyson. So I manage mobile development engineering teams who develop the Dyson Link app. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we use some KPIs to help us transform our CI. So first of all, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the app. So it's called the My Dyson app. And this is what it looks like. It's an IoT app, and it's a bit of a one-stop shop for all Dyson connected products. So Dyson connected products include things like fans, purifiers, humidifiers. We've got lights, we've got robotic vacuum cleaners. And the app also provides specialist content and help and support for an increasing number of our products which are not connected. So things like the supersonic hairdryer, the air wrap, and a range of stick vacuum cleaners. So our app is an IoT app. We connect to some products over Wi-Fi and we connect to some products over Bluetooth. And it is a big app. Lots of our competitors have one app for each kind of category of products, but we want our customers to just be able to use one app to control everything. So it is a really big app. So some facts about the app before we move on. We've got about 4.5 million customers, about 60% of them are iOS users. Our app is available in 42 different markets. It's translated into 39 languages. And we have 7 Scrum teams across 3 global locations. So that's at the moment the UK, Singapore, and Poland. We have approximately 60 engineers working on the app at any one time. And from a CI perspective, now this figure, I always have to double check that it's correct because it always amazes me, but we run over 750,000 test instances on our CI every day, and we release every 4 weeks. Our main branch is always releasable, but because we connect to physical products, we don't release dynamically. We always do an additional test with some physical products before we release, and therefore it makes sense for us to keep to a 4-week cadence. So that's a little bit of background about our application. And now I want to talk to you about our CI, kind of how we got to the point where we needed to transform it. So to begin with, the Dyson app was outsourced. It was a bit of an experiment to control one product. We sent it out to an agency. They developed it. We decided we liked it, our customers liked it, our stakeholders liked it, and we wanted to add more products to it. Now, the way the agency had developed it architecturally wasn't brilliant, so it wasn't particularly easy for us to add new categories of product. And also some of our new products are really quite secret, and we didn't want to share those with an external agency, so we brought the development in-house. And this was a completely new thing for Dyson. So a whole new development ecosystem. Dyson didn't know anything about mobile development. It didn't really know anything about MacBooks. I don't think anyone had one. And we had a couple of developers and they needed to build and test. And at that point, and still, Dyson uses the Atlassian tool suite. So the developers bought a Mac Mini and they turned it into a Bamboo agent and they created a little CI pipeline and they used that. So the app popularity increased. The popularity increased with our customers and with our internal stakeholders. And we started to generate quite a big backlog of work. So our team had to grow. And as our team grew, the demand on the CI started to increase. And what did we do? Well, we didn't really have a budget and we didn't have a DevOps team. So we bought some more Mac Minis. We even bought some Mac Pros. So we basically ended up with lots of CI machines on desks. So this was a bit of a problem, as you can imagine. So 3 main areas that were really affecting us. Speed. Well, we're building iOS and Android apps. And Android is not particularly efficient to build on a Mac. And Macs aren't really very powerful when it comes to executing UI tests. So that was a major problem. Maintenance, the overhead was ridiculous. When we wanted to upgrade Xcode, we had to upgrade it on all the machines. Android Studio, same thing. Operating systems. We even had the strange situation at some point in lockdown where we had security guys in our campus walking around with a map of desks looking for a specific machine because it had frozen, with us on the phone to them trying to get it to reboot. So it was turning into a bit of a nightmare. Also, scalability issues. The team was continuing to grow, and the only option that we really had was to buy another piece of hardware at that point. And buying another piece of hardware was possible, but where were we going to put it? We didn't have a server room to put it in. These Macs were filling up desks in our campus. So something had to change. So that was a bit of a background for you to show you where we had got to. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we started our transformation journey. And as with all change, it requires buy-in from more than one person, and it requires a vision. So we wanted to create a vision. We gathered together a working group, and these were people who had already been vocal, either positively or negatively, about CI, or people who had been actively helping to try and attain or improve the CI. And we set out the problem and we worked together to try to create a vision. Now, to be honest, it was quite difficult. We struggled to come up with a nice statement, but it was pretty obvious that we all wanted the same thing. So we didn't get too hung up on it. And I'll show you in a bit what we actually ended up with. So then we moved on to objectives. We were able to set out a good list of short and long-term objectives, which then allowed us to create a really decent backlog of work for ourselves. And then the final piece of the puzzle was KPIs, some key performance indicators. We felt that if we created some key performance indicators, we'd be able to understand where we were right now, how we were doing as we made changes. Also felt it would let us know when we'd done enough. So let's go back to the vision. Like I said, we struggled to come up with like one vision statement which captured everything, but we didn't get too hung up on it. And it was obvious we're all looking to achieve something similar. So this is actually a snapshot of some of the statements that people came up with. And there are some words there, that keywords that like pop out. So they're repeated in a lot of these statements. So reliable, fast or speed, scalable, being able to maintain, feedback, confidence. So we were all had the same keywords really. So we kind of felt that was enough. And then our objectives, like I said, we created a nice backlog of work. We had some short and long-term objectives. And when we analyzed these objectives, we found that they fell into 5 categories. And these are the 5 categories. And these categories pretty much mirror the words that we were using when we were trying to define a vision statement. So we felt that we were definitely on the right track. And we also thought out of these 2 categories, there were 2 in particular in there that we could easily look to measure and use as key performance indicators. And those 2 were speed and reliability. We felt that speed and reliability were going to be some of the easiest things to measure, and they were also going to be the things which gave us the best indication if the changes that we were making were taking us in the right direction. So from a speed perspective, we looked at 2 things. We had 2 KPIs. One was duration. So duration is how long does it actually take one of our bamboo plans to execute. Queue time, how long does one of our jobs have to queue before it finds an available agent that it can begin executing on? And then the next one was CI stability. So this is the percentage of jobs which weren't interrupted by fatal issues with the CI itself. So what did these KPIs actually look like? Well, they looked like this. So let me talk you through that. In the first column, we've got a pipelines or plans. They're basically bamboo plans, and they contain multiple jobs underneath them. So the first one is XUI test. At the time, it was about 400 UI tests. Espresso, the same, is espresso test, contained about 400 espresso tests. Android was the Android build. So that was building 3 different flavors of the Android app and the unit tests. So 3 different flavors. We have a debug version, we have a future version, which has some of our secret products in it, and a release version, and executing 10,000 unit tests against each of those flavors. iOS, a release version of the iOS, and again, a debug and a future with some secret products in it, and again, 10,000 unit tests. So they are the plans that we were measuring. And then we had to set the ranges for the KPIs. So on this graphic, red for us was totally unacceptable. Orange is, this is pretty bad. Yellow is, well, we can live with this. And green is, this is where we want to be, and this is where we want to stay. So in the beginning, we mapped ourselves against these ranges, and we calculated how much time we would save by moving towards the green end of the indicators. And the numbers that we got were astounding to everyone, even people like me who knew that we had a really big problem. And we used these KPIs continually through the program. We presented them to our stakeholders at the end of every sprint. So at the end of every 2 weeks, we would present these, and we could show where we still had problem areas, but we could also show the progress we were making. But I'm just going to go back to what I said a minute ago about how we mapped ourselves against these ranges and calculated how much time we would save by moving towards the green end of the indicators. We calculated that if we could move towards the green end of the indicators, it would be the equivalent to gaining about, if I can move the slide on, 7.5 developers per month. So it was really difficult to appreciate the scale of the problem until we put it into a number like this, and it was setting out the KPIs that allowed us to do this. Now, that might sound ridiculous, like a ridiculous amount, but at the end of the day, what we were saying was that we were going to save half an hour of waiting time for feedback on every iOS or Android plan that we ran, and we were going to save about an hour and a half for every Espresso or XUI test plan that we ran. And we run these plans like 600 times a month. And the iOS build and UI test, they run in parallel, and the Android build and UI test run in parallel. So it was working out that we were going to save something like 1,200 hours per month, which is like 7.5 developer man months. Now, this is not completely dead time. This is not, developers can't do anything whilst they're waiting for this feedback. But it's not efficient time. So it's too long to go and grab a coffee, check your email, come back and get feedback. And it's not long enough to fully complete something else. And as we know, context switching, particularly when we're working in a development environment, is really detrimental to productivity. And the other thing as well is we were able to put a number on this. We were able to put pound or dollar signs on this as to how much this is potentially costing us. And it was actually some of these figures that persuaded our stakeholders to start giving us some resource to start tackling this problem. Because until this point, this kind of CI work was always being bumped by feature work. So we started work, and as they say, that which is measured improves. So the big question is, did the KPIs work? What happened? Well, if we take a look here, so this is Android building unit test. It's a snapshot between August 20, before we started any work, and August 21, where we feel like we had kind of completed what we were going to do with Android. And we can see massive differences in reduction of the duration of the plan. The stability is improved, which means that the CI doesn't fail so often. So we've got less reruns, which is less overall load, and our queue time has gone down. And we've got our little KPIs at the top, and you can see that we are in the green. We had made significant improvements. And then we moved on to the espresso test, and it's a similar thing. Huge improvements. Our CI stability wasn't quite where we wanted, but we felt that we could live with it, and we felt that we had made just enough improvements there for us to continue. So Android was easier for us and cheaper. We moved on to iOS, and iOS again, yeah, we've done really well. We're in the green. Everything's looking good. We've reduced our duration. Our CI stability's gone up. Our queue time's gone down. So this is where it gets interesting, and this is where we still are on our journey. And this is how, even 2 years down the line, KPIs are still informing what we do. This is our XUI test. Now, we always knew this was going to be our toughest and most expensive problem. And interestingly, you'll actually see, if you look at the duration, that our duration has increased since we started looking at this. We do have maybe about 80 more tests than when we started, or maybe even 100 more tests than when we started. But the CI stability has increased, which means we rerun less, and the queue time, really importantly, has gone down. So it's really clear to see, if you look at the top, where we need to focus our efforts. We need to get the duration down. We know how to do this, but we don't have the resource to work on it right at this moment, but we will have in the new year. And it is going to be our focus for next year. So this just goes to show that, we still use these, and they still help to point out where we need to go. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we decided to do first, because you can see that we started with Android. And we ran things through a priority filter. We wanted things where the cost was low. We had high team expertise. We had small pieces of work, and we thought the size of the win was going to be quite big. So we put all our backlog through that filter, and that came out in the order of Android builds, our espresso tests, our iOS builds, and then our XUI test. And then I guess the other big question is, what changes did we actually make? Well, this presentation is not really about the changes, but I don't think I can finish it without telling you what we actually did. So we clearly moved off of the Mac Minis, and we moved for Android to some hosted Linux VMs. So these are actually VMs which are hosted within Dyson. There's a tools and process team who host them for us. The espresso tests, we moved to Firebase Test Lab. So we do a lot of sharding to reach our target of 20 minutes. For iOS, we moved to Bitrise for builds, enabling us to hit all our targets. And for XUI tests, we've also moved to Bitrise. So we've got some more work still to do there to get there, but we're confident that we can get there. So the final kind of takeaway from this really is to encourage people to not be afraid and to be bold and to try and make the change. And for me, the key things really are: go out there and sell your vision, and find some allies, people who can help you, help spread your message and spread your vision. Define some KPIs and use those to highlight your problem. It works really well, a visual indicator to show where the problems are in a really simple manner. And it also really helps you to show off your improvements. When you're setting your KPIs, aim high. If you hit your target range easily, then revise it. And then the other thing, which I spoke about before, is convert your time savings to pounds, because money talks. So we learned some lessons along the way, and two key ones. The first one is, don't stop reporting on your KPIs after you hit your target ranges. This is something which never really ends. Hopefully, your team will continue to grow as you expand. And when that happens, the load on your CI will increase. When the load on the CI increases, then you're probably going to need to make some adjustments. So keep an eye on your KPIs. We made the mistake with Android build we had to add some more Linux VMs to help spread the load a bit. And then the other thing is try and automate the production of your KPI dashboard. It just makes it much easier. It's something that we didn't do, and with hindsight, I really wish that we had done. And that is it from me. I'm not sure if we've got time for some questions or not. Okay, thank you.